Imagine how the world would be if you would be able to convert someone from being one of your biggest critics to be a supporter at anything that you are endeavoring. And that's reframe. It's taking a definition, an image, an illustration of some sort and applying a different meaning to it. Now in this reframe, it's just completely positive and intentional. You care because you want equality for everyone. You want to make sure that I use it to the best of my ability as well. So I've already had these reframes in mind, but what he said completely surprised me. He said, for you, pulled my mind back and I said, I'm not getting up. And I stayed in that state until I saw clearly the word. Welcome to Present Potential. I'm your host, Hassan, and the reason I launched this podcast is to create a ripple effect of optimism that reaches 1 billion people in the next decade. Ambitious? Very. Scary? A little bit. The aim of Present Potential is to empower listeners by sharing stories of individuals who've turned challenges into opportunities, proving that we all have untapped potential. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. If you've tuned in before, thank you for your support, and I hope you find value in these conversations. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Present Potential. I'm your host, Hassan, and I'm so glad and grateful that you're here, that you continue to come back to listen to these episodes. Today, I'm going to be talking about conflict resolution. And in particular, I'm going to be sharing a framework or a concept of how we can switch someone from being a critic to an ally. Imagine how the world would be if you would be able to convert someone from being one of your biggest critics to be a supporter at anything that you are endeavoring on. I don't even know if endeavoring is a word, but I'm just creating something as we go along. So this topic, this concept, it really stems out from one of the books that I came across, which is Sleight of Mouth by Robert Dilts, Volume 1. And the author in the book describes it in more detail. So if you're interested to learn more, reach out or grab yourself a copy of that book. But I'm also going to share this concept based on different stories that I can relate to personally as well. And that would hopefully be an illustration of what this concept is and how we can apply it on a day-to-day basis. So without further ado, I'd like to begin by diving deep into this concept. So if you've been following my journey and you know who I am, then you know that at some point I used to be an investment advisor. I wasn't always a high-performance coach for executives. My journey was completely different. I'm going to share with you a little bit about myself. Now, this is going to be a little bit vulnerable, so if you know the story, then you can fast forward. If not, then I invite you to just continue listening, because it relates to how I'm going to be connecting the conflict resolution and converting critics to allies. So I'm originally from Yemen. That's a country in the Middle East, pretty poor country, and sometimes not a lot of great press in the news. Now, I completed my high school education there, and I moved to the UK, where I studied economics and finance. And I graduated with an undergraduate degree wanting to conquer the world of finance. Now, this was in 2008, so it was probably at the worst time to go into finance. If you didn't know, then that's the pinnacle or like the height of the global financial crisis. So what I did was I did a master's degree, and I wanted to study even more to understand more about finance. So I went into investment management. Now, I graduated and I joined some of the biggest companies in the world. I started working in London. I worked there for a year, and then I moved to Dubai, where I worked with really dream come true types of companies and jobs. Now, throughout my career, there has something been missing. I was feeling that I was completely unfulfilled and even maybe borderline self-diagnosed depressed. Why self-diagnosed? Well, I'm a guy, and usually guys don't talk about these things. At that point in time, I used to think that the most important thing in life was to make as much money and provide for the people around you to make sure that you can protect them and be there for them. I completely neglected myself, and I didn't know why I was doing it or how I can control that. And then I decided to relocate and move to Cyprus. Now, why Cyprus, you might ask? I met my wife in London, and she's originally from Cyprus. So we used to come visit the island regularly, and I loved it. The tradition, the people, the culture. And if you've ever come to Cyprus, you'd know what I'm talking about. I found a job in one of the big four consultancy firms, and I decided to convince my wife to come. A couple of months after I found it, we did move, and I joined the firm, and I was the second in command. I was building a new service line within the company that eventually started generating revenue. We had a growing team and respectable list of clients. But that feeling still persisted. I didn't know what it was. Something was missing. In March of 2022, I contracted COVID and I was self-isolating away from my wife and my two daughters. Now, I used that time to completely self-reflect. I was working long hours and I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I was completely unfulfilled. Everything from the outside seemed like it was great. I had the success. I was working in a great company. I had a respectable job. I was making good money, had a great boss, good team, but I still felt that something was missing. Now, I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but that sense, that feeling doesn't go away easily. I've been on a self-discovery journey up until that point since my time in Dubai, and I started reading a lot of books and meditating as well. So I decided to meditate with no time restrictions, just to dedicate the hour or 2 hours or 10 hours or how long ever it's needed to answer one question. And that question is, what's my purpose in life? Now, when I asked this question, I had an idea in mind that my purpose in life is to serve, to be a provider of some sort. An hour into the meditation, I started to drift, but I pulled my mind back and I said, I'm not getting up. And I stayed in that state until I saw clearly the word solve. Now, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what I was supposed to solve. I wasn't an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor to solve anything. So I went to sleep feeling completely perplexed. The next morning, I woke up and I was scrolling through YouTube to watch some documentaries or podcasts, and I stumbled upon Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. In that episode, he was interviewing Mo Gaudat. Now, if you don't know Mo used to be an executive in Google in Dubai, and he probably had the pinnacle career that anybody could strive and aspire to be like. That was certainly my goal, my dream. I was walking down the same path in my own career and journey. Now, if you don't know Mo, then this is going to be a spoiler. So if you haven't heard of him or watched his videos, I highly encourage you to do so. But in that episode, Mo was explaining why he decided to leave his role. And the reason was because he lost his son tragically due to a routine operation, which completely transformed his life. He decided to write a book. And that book's name is Solve for Happy. Now, when I saw that, it hit me like a train because I also saw the word solve. And I completely felt that I was going down the same line of feeling unfulfilled for the rest of my life. So I decided to make a change. And I came out of that room and I told my wife, this is going to change because I'm not happy. And it's been years in the making. Now, the reason I'm sharing the story with you is because it wasn't an overnight decision and it wasn't even an easy decision to make. But during that process, I had to sit with my boss and tell him my dream, what it is that I wanted to do, the next place that I wanted to go to. Now, fast forward to today. I'm a high-performance coach for executives. I work with executives and professionals. I focus on communication and effective routines to ensure that we get more done by doing less. In the journey of me becoming here, my ex-boss became my biggest ally. Now, if you're interested to hearing how that took place, then I invite you to continue listening. I'm going to start introducing you to the topic of how we can reframe and frame in order to be able to communicate clearly what we want to create in a critic to become an ally. So we can start by just understanding these concepts. First, we're going to start by reframing. What does reframing actually mean? Have you come across this topic, this subject, this words, this approach? Now, for me, in order to understand what reframing is, I'd like first to understand what framing is. Framing is exactly as you are imagining right now. Imagine that you were to take your phone or camera or something and you find a beautiful picture. Maybe you're at the beach on a holiday somewhere and the sun is setting and the colors are colliding, combining to create that majestic, beautiful portrait. There's the sea in the background and you reach into your pocket or bag or wherever you hold your phone or camera and you take a snip of that image and you are framing that picture. That's literally what framing is. Just taking a snapshot of what it is that you are looking. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I went to a carnival. in Limassol with my family. And what a carnival is, it's really a big celebration to kick off the Lent process. And this is not about any celebratory engagements. It's not about religion or anything that I'm going into that. But the purpose is, and I'm starting to go tangent here, the purpose of me sharing that is because during a point in time when the people walking down the carnival, my daughter decided to go into the middle of the street. Now, they've blocked one of the main streets in Limassol, and people were standing in two different sides on the sidewalks, just watching the people go by. And we would throw confetti and we would spray them with soap and foam, and we'd listen to music, and it's just a joyous occasion. My daughter went into the middle of the road because she was collecting the caps of the spray cans. And I went in because there was no one coming. And I was looking right and left to see if there's any vehicles or people walking. But they had a couple of 100 meters until they reached. And then I looked at my daughter, who was dressed in a unicorn rainbow outfit. And she was just having so much fun. And I reached into my pocket and took the phone and took a snip of that picture. I framed that, because she looked so cute in her outfit and what she was doing. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because that frame can be completely reframed. You see, when I was taking that picture, I didn't include the people in the sidewalks. I didn't include the people who were behind me, or the buildings, or the city, or the sky, or the country, or the world, or the universe for that matter. It was just a small snip of that moment in time to showcase what I'm seeing, to share with people. Now, if I showed you the picture, you would have seen a cute little girl wearing rainbow unicorn outfit in the middle of the street with a lot of confetti. That's the description. But in order to reframe that, the word that I would use is freedom. I saw complete freedom. Freedom in creativity, freedom in self-expression, freedom in being oneself, freedom from any judgment. My daughter was completely free in being herself. And that's reframe. It's taking a definition, an image, an illustration of some sort, and applying a different meaning to it. Now, in this reframe, it's just completely positive and intentional. Maybe in my point of view, but I hope in many people's as well. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because that's a big part of converting critics to allies, is by understanding their frame of the world. What are they seeing that they're criticizing? And how can we reframe that in order to bring them into an ally? Now, I've been sharing some definitions as well about allies and critics. There's really three different types of personas within this concept. There's the critic, there's the ally, and then there's the dreamer. A dreamer is someone who sees in an as-if frame, an as-if frame, something that we can aspire to, something that is impressive, something that is goal-oriented, and it's such a driving feeling. Have you ever had that feeling when you were just dreaming for something to happen and there were no rules that would bound you in that sense? Then the critic, on the other hand, he looks at things from a problem frame, things that are negative, things that might not work out, things that really tarnish that dream, that idea, things that bring it down, that point out to the negativity behind it. And the ally is really bringing that critic into the middle and bridging that gap between them. So in my story that I shared when I decided to leave my job, I built up the courage to go and speak to my boss. And I'll explain these different roles when I'm sharing this story with you. And I only became aware of how I shifted a critic into an ally when I was preparing for this episode. So I went to my boss, and it was in a room. And it's so important to understand at that point, I was leading a team. I was leading a department. I had a lot of responsibilities and I was relied upon. I was doing a lot and the clients respected me, and I was such a pillar in the company. So it was so hard for me to say that I wanted to leave. It was so hard. And I went to my boss and I told him, despite everything that I was feeling, that there's a different calling for me, that I wanted to explore something else. And I even think that during that conversation, I had a tear in my eye because I was so worried about what would happen, what would the response be, and what am I doing with my life? Now, if you assume that his response was negative, then you're right, because it was. And he told me something along the lines that this is a terrible idea. This is a terrible idea. You have a family. You have people that you're supporting and providing for. You're doing so well. You're going to continue growing. Why do you want to throw this away? Now, in the definition that I just explained, I was the dreamer in that scenario. And you could see it because I was dreaming that I wanted to create something completely new, to try something that is unequivocal to anything that I've ever done in my career. And at the other end of the spectrum was my ex-boss. And he was the critic. He was telling me that this is a terrible idea. Now, when I was preparing this, I really reflected on those conversations and also the journey of how I got to here. You see, my boss wasn't saying that it's a terrible idea. Maybe he was saying that quite literally. But in fact, he was saying that I worry about you. I care for you to be able to do well so that you can provide for yourself and your family. And he was also saying, I want to make sure that the team is well taken care of and that this transition is seamless, that it's not impacted by what is happening. Now, that's the reframe of this is a terrible idea. That reframe helped me to see it from his point of view and to understand how I can bring him into becoming an ally. How me, the dreamer, wanting to do something that is completely unordinary in that scenario, in that state, in my life. Now, one of the ways that we can convert critics into allies is after reframing, to state it in a positive frame, and then to ask this specific question. How? How can we make this possible? That question is transformational because it negates all the negativity after you've created that positive intention and also the positive space to find out ways in order to be completely aligned. And that's exactly what took place. Now, I didn't know that this was taking place until recently when I came across this concept, but it's exactly what happened. We both were completely honest with each other. I told him that I wanted to explore whether this new found passion of creating a new life and serving others in a different way is a way for me to go forward. And he wanted to make sure that everything was seamless. Transition wasn't going to impact anything. And we came together. We bridged that gap by understanding how can we do it. Now, I was very lucky and very blessed actually to have that kind of ally because what I had in terms of opportunity was working part-time. So I got to explore whether this is something that I wanted to do. And I also was there for my team, and my team had the time to transition. And clients also understood what was happening. So at the end of the day, everyone achieved what they wanted to achieve. Now, if we went through that a little bit too quick, don't worry, because I'm going to cover the 3 different steps that are essential to convert critics into allies. The first one is to reframe. So to understand what the negative part or negative sentence is and reframe it. In my example, my ex-boss said that this is terrible. The reframe of this is terrible was he cares. He cares about my well-being and he also cares about the team and the clients. So that care was the reframe. The second part is to invite the critic to state the negative phrase, sentence in a positive way, in a positive frame, in an as-if frame. And he probably had did that without me noticing because I never really got into this detail when I was reflecting. By him stating that I want to make sure that you are okay and that you can provide for yourself and also that the clients and the team is doing well, that's a positive reframe from his point of view. And then we both asked how. These are the 3 steps. And this can be applied to any scenario. For example, if someone says, this is too expensive, that's a negative statement. And we could change that critic. We can understand what they mean by that's expensive. How do they define expensive? Does it mean that they're looking for value in anything that they're investing? Is it based on time or the actual quality? Or what is it that's really making them think that it's expensive? Maybe it's the opportunity cost and they want to focus on something else. But it's not expensive. They want to make the most value of it. Now, once we get them to convert to that state, we can ask them, how can we agree that this is a good investment? How can we agree that this is something that you'd want to buy? Now, as I mentioned earlier as well, we could apply this to different scenarios within our lives. During my journey, when I was building my business, and I'm still actually building my business as we speak, one of the purposes and processes going forward is outreach and business development. Because if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you understand that there's a lot that goes into running a business. It's not just you have a dream and you don't want to work for someone and you just create that, because there's the clients that you work for, the networking, the sales, the admin, the accounting, the finance parts, the legal part. There's a lot of different elements and systems that go into place. But what I'm going to focus here is about business development and reaching out to people. Now, the first story was about converting a critic at work to become your ally. This story that I'm going to share with you is how we can convert a self-critic to becoming an ally. When I was doing my outreach messages, I must have sent hundreds, if not thousands, to people and to companies, telling them about the services that I provide and also inviting them to schedule a meeting so that we could discuss how we could benefit from each other's presence and the benefits that they can also gain from working with someone like me? Now, if you've been in business development, then you definitely know that there is 1,000 no's. That's the word that I heard the most. No, no. And in most situations as well, I didn't even hear back from people. That really devastated me because I used to think that, and notice this is the self-critic, I'm not good enough. They don't like me. My product is not desired. They hate me. This is horrible. These phrases that I was telling myself, I was my self-critic. I was the dreamer and self-critic at the same time. I was dreaming that I'm going to be serving clients and blue chip companies and serving executives and professionals to be the best versions of themselves. But at the same time, I was still feeling devastated because I wasn't connecting with them. And that impacted my communication and my outreach and my energy level when I used to go out. So I did exactly what I did before. I reframed my approach. I asked myself, am I really not that good? Do they really hate me? Do they not care? The answer is no. Most people are either too busy or maybe they don't have time to respond. It's pretty much the same thing. Maybe they also feel like they don't want to respond because they don't want to let me down. They actually care for my feelings. Or they actually have someone else there that they're working with and they don't know how to say it. Or maybe they feel that messaging or reaching out or talking to me is out of their comfort zone. It could be any of those things. Now, that was the reframe. Actual words and the reframe within that scenario was, instead of them thinking all of this, how it can serve me is next opportunity. That was the reframe. Them saying no is next opportunity in my mind. Now, I was the dreamer. I had seen the negative in my self-critic. I've converted it and I've reframed it into a positive intention. And now I want to go into the how. How can I actually bring that critic into an ally? When I asked myself that question, how, I answered it with the following. They are giving me the next opportunity. They are saving me time. Their nose is saving me time. And that's how my self-critic became an ally. Because I understood that people who are not responding, they're actually giving me the opportunity to reach out to others and saving me valuable time and energy from reaching out to them and wasting my time. And that's how I converted my self-critic into an ally, exactly in that situation. And there were the 3 steps that we mentioned. The first one was the negative aspect of it. So understanding what that negativity is, reframing that to a positive, and then asking it in a positive way by using the word how. Now, in order to land this message, I'm going to share one more story with you, which can probably be applied to any scenario or any process that we all might follow. And this is in terms of negotiations. A couple of weeks ago, I went to one of the gyms that is close to our house. And this gym is great. It's perfect for me. It's open 24 hours, so I can access it any point in time. It has all the machines that I want, the free weights, the barbells, the weights that I can use, and the squat racks. And there's just a lot of open space to do different types of exercises, whether it's hits or routine or jump rope or anything like that. For me, it's the perfect gym. Now, I've been using this gym for a couple of years, but I never signed up. I used to go to the gym and pay as you go. The first time I went, I met the owner and I told him what I do. I usually work out at home and I explained to him that I might come once a month or maybe once every quarter. And he agreed to allow me to use it and just to pay as you go. A few weeks ago when I went, I loved that time and I exercised and I felt such a high. I don't know if it was the dopamine after the exercise, but I certainly felt great. And I messaged the gym owner and I told him, so I'm done for the day. Can you remind me about your packages? Now, I was just exploring here to see if they've changed or not. And he told me, sure, you can pay 90 euros for 1 month or you can pay 270 for 3 months. And he told me, and this is all through text messages. And he said, the best deal is 3 months because you pay around like 70 euros per month or a little bit more. Now, I saw this in text messages and I knew that I was the dreamer because I wanted to negotiate the price to be able to accommodate how much I'm going to be using the gym and whether it's worthwhile for my investment. And I knew that he personified him as the critic, saying that it's a no if I were to tell him I want to pay less. So without me going into reframing his intention, because this was on text, I went straight in for the kill. And I asked him, how can we agree to 50 euros per month? Now, that's almost half of what he was asking for a 1 month gym membership, from 90 to 50. And I just said, let's see what happens. I was expecting him to come back and say, it's too expensive, it's too low. And then I could reframe, saying that, I know you value others as well. You care for the other gym members because they've invested that amount. You care for your machines and for keeping your gym well equipped and running and functioning. You care because you want equality for everyone. You want to make sure that I use it to the best of my ability as well. So I've already had these reframes in mind. But what he said completely surprised me. He said, for you, yes. Now, I didn't even have to go into any of those reframes because he agreed to what I had asked for. Now, as a dreamer, I've converted him to completely become my ally just by asking that how question. Now, with all of these stories that I've shared with you and also just touching on this topic and not going too deep into the framing and reframing and the purpose as well of how to understand the intention behind these different phrases, I hope that I was able to illustrate or portray that anything is possible. Anything is really possible. And if we are the dreamers, then it is our responsibility to find ways to make things work for our benefit, for our purpose, for the people around us, for the things that we want to do. Because if we are dreaming of doing something that is impossible, it becomes possible once we ask how. I hope you found value in any of this discussion that I've shared with you. And I invite you to use it as well, to explore and to experiment. If you're a parent, try it with your kids. I certainly try it with my kids because every single morning before we drop my kids to school, they are the critics. And my wife and I are the big dreamers, thinking that we're going to change them and they're going to say, I love this clothes and I'm going to be able to wear it based on what you've said and I'm going to go to school on time. Every single morning we have these discussions. And every single morning I reframe my own approach to understand it. If my daughter is to say, no, I don't want to wear that, I understand it that she's not actually saying no to me or to the clothes, but she is saying yes to her own ability to choose clothes. Yes, for the things that she loves. Maybe she wants to wear something different because she cares about how people perceive her. Maybe. I don't know. But I see it in that point of view. And I switched that reframe and I asked her, how can we agree to wear something together? Now, when you speak to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old in that way, they start wondering how. And they develop that awareness that they're able to create things on their own. And this is what I try to educate my kids with, is that anything is possible. And this is what I encourage you as well, to use this, to explore it, read more about it. Check out the book that I've suggested, Sleight of Mouth by Robert Dilts, Volume 1. And there's more volumes. I haven't read them yet, but I plan to do so. Now, if you found any value in this, please feel free to share it with your friends or family or colleagues or anyone that would benefit from these types of concepts and discussions. But first, try it yourself. And if you want to hear more and if you want to engage more, then I also invite you to join my weekly newsletter, Momentum Letters, where I share these kind of personal reflections and stories and concepts and tools and productivity hacks that maybe you'll gain from them. There's also something coming out soon, which I'm teasing people with what it is, and I haven't shared anything more about it. It's probably one of the biggest things that I've created in terms of my content. And the idea there is for you to gain access to a lot of different tools and valuable insights. Now, I'm not going to share more, but follow me for this if you're interested. And if this is resonating with you, then come back for more. Thank you for tuning in. I'm very thankful for everyone who has been engaging with us in this podcast, and there's more to come. This is just the beginning. And as always, remember that today is the most important day of your life. Until next time. Thank you for watching and listening to Present Potential. If you found value in this episode, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more. Join the conversation in the comments and let us know your biggest takeaway. If you'd like to listen to other inspiring stories, check out our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Make sure to also follow us on Instagram under Present Potential Podcast, where you get to see behind the scenes and engage with us.